I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is real sales talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. This episode is brought to you by Convertist. We are incredibly excited to have partnered together with Convertist, which helps SaaS and services run managed outbound campaigns for teams looking to drive new pipeline opportunities. For teams targeting mid-size and enterprise deals, Convertist integrates with CRMs like Salesforce to uncover actionable data in their sales processes, which enables them to find areas of improvement and double down on strategies that actually work. Benchmark the lead generation performance expected of a seasoned SDR and identify actionable areas of improvement in a sales process, all out of one place with Convertist. For teams looking to measure and enhance their performance of their sales funnel and architect a better revenue engine, cast an application to join the Convertist Slack group. It's at convertist.com/Slack. That's Convertist, convertist.com/Slack, SLACK. What is going on, Real Sales Talk family? We are live with another episode. Actually, Phil, we have been going international this week. We've interviewed someone from the UK, and now we've got a really cool guest from Israel. So we're going worldwide, Phil.
We're trying to hit every audience, to all the people that are listening for us. We have people all over the world that are listening. So
it's true.
We love the Real Sales Talk family.
It's true. Yes. And I checked the stats the other day, and New Zealand and Australia are on the come up. So shout out to Australia and New Zealand. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Today, we've got Talia Wolf, who is joining us today to talk about understanding the customer, understanding how they think, and maybe we'll dabble a little bit into cognitive bias and try and get into the mind of the buyer so that we as salespeople can do a better job at serving them, at understanding what their needs are, and so on. So, Talia, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Am I pronouncing your name right? I think I am.
You are, yes. You're one of the few that's actually pronouncing my name.
I don't know how else to say it. Like how would someone say that other than Talia? Talia?
There's different Thalia I've heard. Talia.
Talia, that's exotic.
Yes. Yeah, there's been a few really weird ones, I can say. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad I got it right the first time. So let's dive in. I want you to kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing. In fact, if I'm just going to recollect a little bit about how I got turned on to you. I think that maybe about a year ago or so, you came up on a Snapchat list, Snapchat people to follow. And that's kind of how I got interested in what you're doing, and just really fascinated by the idea of the psychology of buyers. I've always been fascinated with that. So give our Real Sales Talk family an intro to who you are and what you do in your real job.
Awesome. So I'm Talia, and I have been doing conversion optimization for about 7 or 8 years now. And what that means is I help businesses optimize their websites. So I don't deal with the traffic at all. I don't care how much traffic you have coming to your website. Well, I do care, but it's not what I do. What I do is I try and create better experiences for those people. So if you're generating, if you're bringing in 1,000 people a day to your website, how can you get more than 100 people to sign up? How can you get 200 people to purchase something from you, and essentially kind of get more out of that? And the way I do it is by understanding consumers, understanding the psychology behind them, why they buy stuff, what are the emotional drivers of them, their concerns, their dreams. Why do they actually buy a product? And I know that most people seem to think that people buy products because they, the features, the pricing. That's not the case. People buy on emotion, and we'll probably touch on that a bit later. But that's what I do. I do in-depth research, and then I use that research to translate it into A/B tests. And I test dozens and hundreds of websites to just see what works, what brings in the money, what's going to, grow my client's business.
I like what you're talking about, bringing in the money. You're talking to the right people here, and you've got the right audience here, and I think you got people's attention. So I do want you to dive into people making buying decisions off of emotion and logic. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a really fascinating thought, that people think that they buy logically, but really they buy emotionally. So tell me about that.
Sure. So the way it works is we buy on emotion and we actually explain by logic. So no one likes to admit that we're irrational. Everyone thinks that you're rational, but essentially every decision you make in life is based on how things are presented to you. It's enough for a checkbox to be in a certain way, or if something's in a certain color, or if it's written in a certain persuasive way, to alter our decision. And that's how we make decisions in life. It's according to whatever's placed in front of us, but also it's according to what we, what we're dreaming of, what we want. Essentially, every time we buy something, we're buying a better version of ourselves. And that means I'm trying to be a better mother, a better father. I want to be a better marketer. I want people to know me. I want a higher self-esteem. I want to be part of a community. Whatever it is, when you're buying something, that's what you're buying. You're not buying the pricing. You're not buying the features. And for example, if you think about Apple products, people don't buy Apple products because they're better. They might be better. I mean, I'm completely Apple. I'm all iPhone and Macs and everything, but you buy them because it says something about you. When you buy an Apple product, you are different than other people. And that's how they've managed to kind of brand it. And it's the same with Coca-Cola and Dove and Lego and all these companies, all the offline huge companies, right? That they know that what people buy is emotion. And then after we buy, we kind of feel sucky about the stuff that we bought. So like, I bought a $500 t-shirt. What was I thinking? Oh, you know what? It was on sale. I've got a wedding to go to. And you kind of start making all these logical explanations. And those are actually cognitive biases. These different kind of things that influence our brain without us knowing, but we want to feel good about our purchase. It's called confirmation bias. So we just kind of find the reason to it.
So the $1 million question, Talia, and I know Phil is probably thinking this as well, is how do we understand what that motivation is? In your situation, it sounds like you're dealing with where you haven't even faced the customer yet. You're not face to face. It's typically online. You're looking at a former landing page. What I want to know from you, and the $1 million question, is how do you understand, or how do you learn what that driver is that will help them make that decision, and the decision that you can help them make to buy the product or service or whatever?
Fantastic question. Essentially, it all boils down to research. And the research is divided into two sections. So the first one's going to be an analytic research, right? So I'm going to look in Google Analytics, and I'm going to use heat maps. I'm going to use any tools and platforms that show me the raw data. But these are tools that are going to help me understand where the problems are, where the leaks are. They don't tell me the story. They don't tell me why the leaks are happening. It's just where the problem is. So I find a problem in a landing page, or I find a problem in a pricing page, and now I need to optimize it. How do you know what to optimize? You go to the second part, and that is the in-depth strategic research. And that's when you do a lot more than just like looking at the numbers, because the numbers are great. It's data, but that's not people. There's people behind the screens, and we need to get to know them. So there's all sorts of stuff we'll do. We'll do competitor research. We'll do a SWOT analysis. We will do customer surveys, customer interviews, usability tests. We will do competitor research in terms of reviews and social proof, market research. So personas and profile building, there's so much into it. And the idea is, and at the end of the day, is to get into our customers' heads. So to speak to them, understand what they need, what their problems are, what their concerns, what their pain is right now before they find a solution, and what they would like to feel after. And there's all sorts of techniques to that, but essentially interviewing people, talking to customers is the number one thing you have to do. And I'm constantly taken aback by the amount of companies that have never actually spoken to a customer. This is, paramount in order to grow your business. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And then once I've done all of that, I have an hypothesis of, why people are buying from this company, what makes them tick, what their concerns are. Then I can translate that knowledge into, psychological colors, into the right persuasive copy and design and images and stuff like that.
So when I'm a salesperson and I have a first chance to talk to my customer, what's the types of questions that you would start off just starting to learn about them and digest the way they're thinking and dissect the way that they're thinking? What are the first few questions that you would start asking? So
I know that usually what people ask is they go straight to, so why did you buy from our product? Why did you buy a product? What stuff like that. I like to take it a little more personal. So I will ask those questions. I will ask, like what made you buy and stuff. But usually people will answer what they think you want them to answer. So it's a lot of these features were the best, or the pricing was really good, or the answers are very kind of technical because people don't realize that they buy on emotion. So there's a technique to it. Essentially, it's about asking why until there's no whys left. So essentially, if I ask, hey, why did you buy this product? They'll say, well, it had the most features. And I'd say, why did you need so many features? And they say, well, I wanted something different. And then I'll say, well, why do you need something different? And you keep asking these whys until you get to that bottom line where they'll suddenly say, well, I just want to stand out because everyone's doing the same and I want to, do something different. Bam, that's it, right? They want higher self-esteem. They want appreciation from people outside, from their team, from their family, whatever it is. So asking those questions is also, asking about the pain. So a question that I love, I took from Claire Swanentrott. Take me back to the point, before you had this product. Tell me what it was like. What were you doing before to solve this problem? How were you feeling before you had this issue? How did you solve it? What were you using? I like to go back and I even ask stuff like, who's your role model? What superpower would you have if you could have it? All these more emotional and personal questions that allow me to get to know the customer better.
What words you've touched on colors and phrasing. I'm really curious to get into that. What words or phrasing or colors are engaging people to make that purchase or make that final decision to move forward with a product or service? Can you shed some light on that? What have you seen working?
So it's quite a trick question because if we talk about color psychology for a moment, then everyone loves to talk about color psychology, right? There's these beautiful infographics all over the web saying blue equals trust, purple equals this. That's not true. And why isn't this true? Because people are affected by color in different ways, actually on 3 different levels, their experience, their emotion, and their culture. So white, for example, symbolizes purity and wealth and perhaps wedding in the Western world. And then if you look at the East, that's mourning, right? People die, it's death. So not all colors, not each color has a one ultimate goal and one ultimate feeling. But what I've seen is that once you know the emotion, so say I know that people want to have a higher self-esteem, they want to feel better about themselves. And I know where my customer's coming from, the pain that they're feeling and how they want to feel. So right now I have a low self-esteem. I want to have a high self-esteem. Or right now I feel lonely if it's a dating site and I want to feel loved. I can then match up those pieces. So I know where the country they're from, the age they're from, the culture they're from. I know their feelings, what they're feeling right now, what they want to feel. Then I can attach the right colors to it. Then I can attach the right words to it and use persuasive copy. So it's not so much as if, red buttons really work or, blue color always works. It's about once you identify those small little things, it's easier for you to choose those colors and text.
Got it. So to translate this into kind of our sales audience, typically salespeople have the good fortune of actually getting in front of people. So this is, marketing or referral has generated the lead, and salesperson is able to usually get face to face. If not face to face, then over the phone or doing something like this. So let's say you understand what the buyer is trying to get at. You've asked why until there's no more whys to ask. You understand what they're trying to assess. How do you shape that conversation moving forward? And what I'm particularly looking for are there specific words that you use based on what you know about that buyer? Like, let's continue on with this. I want more self-confidence type thing. So I'm going to purchase this $500 shirt because it's going to make me feel better, and it's going to make me confident, and it's going to enhance my love life and hopefully attract someone my way. As a salesperson, are there any particular words or phrases that you can add into the conversation to continue that discussion based on what they've shared?
Definitely. So what's really interesting is the fact that once you've spoken to your customers, first, you'll start, or your clients, whatever, you'll start seeing a repetitive theme. So people are saying the same stuff. And what's really interesting is that you don't actually have to make anything up. You don't have to start sitting there in a room and kind of thinking, what am I going to say? You can use your customers' words. And that is probably one of the biggest and most effective tips I've ever gotten from anyone. I got this one from Joanna Wiebe, who is the top conversion copywriter in the world by far. And she talks about this, about how people sit in the room, salespeople, thinking, what am I going to say? And the thing is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You need to use their words, use the language that they're using. So it's not, again, I know this is kind of frustrating that I'm not saying, hey, you should use this word, it's going to help. But once you kind of hear the same thing going on and on again, I mean, it's like, as a salesperson, you can sit in front of someone and ask them, hey, what's your hobby? And they'll say, well, I play tennis, or, I'm a footballer. And then later on in the conversation, you will wheel in some sort of, phrase about football, because you now know something about that person. And that's sales, right? You've got to know the person. You can use that. If you know the feelings, like you said, if you know the emotions, it's easier for you to use the language that your customers are already using. If someone says that they feel a certain way, you can say, and a lot of people starting out feel this way, but they find that X, Y, and Z. So you're tackling it, up front before they even get to say, oh, you know what, I'm really worried about X, Y, and Z. You're actually just confronting it and saying, many people have said this, but I found that there's different ways of doing it. So I think that is the best way. And the other thing that's really cool, another cool tip for that online, is actually going to your competitor websites and seeing what reviews they're getting, what people are saying about them. And you can use those words too. So if you can see that people that should be buying from you are buying from your competitors, see what they're complaining about, see what they're actually praising and saying that's amazing, and use that to sell.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, because going into a review site, like, you get a lot of unfiltered, this is how I feel. And there's a lot of key phrases that you can maybe even use to position either against them or for you. And I think that's a really, really interesting tactic that a lot of people can go do today, is jump on whatever review site that you would be using in your industry and go check that out. So that's really, really interesting. So as I'm thinking about sales, I start to apply some of this, I'm starting to get into their head and saying some of the things I'm saying. How do you start to notice how you validate that it's working? So maybe you're saying, hey, they like football. So I can say, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Maybe you drop that. Or how do you keep it genuine, and how do you know that it's working?
Real Sales Talk family, want to take a quick break just to say thank you to our partner Convertist. If you're interested in improving your game to drive leads, opportunities, or closes, join the Convertist Slack group, a place where sales and marketing operators can talk best practices to architect a revenue engine. Cast an application at convertist.com/Slack. That's convertist.com/Slack. Now let's get back to the episode.
Well, I guess it really kind of depends on the type of, salesperson that you are and the type of connection that you've formed. At the end of the day, whether it's sales online, sales offline, you're forming connections. And to anyone, whether if you're selling online or offline. So when it's online, I keep telling people, it's not numbers behind the screens. It's not a geographic location. It's not an age. It's not a device that's behind the screen. It's a person. And the same when you're doing, frontal sales. I did frontal sales for quite a few years. And I noticed that the more personal connection that I had with a person, it was easier to sell to them. Not because I was doing some sort of technique, but it was just, I got to know them. I understood what they cared about. I understood who they were. And it was easier for me to communicate to them what they actually need and make that sale. And it was also easier for me, now that I had a personal connection with them, to identify if I've said something that doesn't match, if I've said something that doesn't make sense, to take that back or say, hey, you know what concerns you? Tell me a bit more. Like, I notice that something's wrong. Tell me more about that. Because you've formed a better connection with someone. You know now what they care about, what's in it for them, what they're looking for. So it's easier for you to even go back and say, hey, I'm here for you. Tell me how can I help?
How much does trust come into play with a buyer's psychology and them finally making that decision to purchase? How much work have you done with that? I'm curious to know if you've got any insight on the importance of trust from a brand or even from a person like a salesperson.
Trust is huge. I mean, trust is one of the number one things that make a sale, right? I mean, if just talking online, every single test I've run has always shown that the more trust you can show, the more sales, the more conversions, the more ROI you're seeing. People online do this by showing, as you mentioned, okay, the brands, the bigger they are, the better. They'll show logos of well-known brands that are using them. They'll have testimonials, they'll have reviews, you'll have little icons of like credit card companies and stuff, just to show that you work with these companies. Trust seals, Trustify, all these plugins, just because trust is so huge. And the interesting thing is, and I was just saying that Andy Crestodina likes to say this, a great marketer, and he says, everything you say about yourself is marketing. Everything someone else says about you is social proof. And that is why it's so important, because when you understand what people care about, and as Phil was just saying, like, go to your competitor's website, see what people are talking about, and use that text. So if someone says, I'm really worried about the durability of the product that you're selling me, instead of saying, just so you know, we have 30 years, whatever, like, hey, that George last week bought this product and he told me he was really worried about it, and he's had this product for 10 years now. It's like these little things that you use that they show trust. So it's online, offline, it's always the same. Trust is paramount.
I love the idea of, the picture that comes to my mind is you're weaving in a storyline about someone, whether it's a celebrity who you've got to sponsor your product or your service, or whether it's a customer who's seen results from your product that you're trying to sell. It is a lot more believable when someone else is saying it instead of you.
For sure. And even, when you're doing a one-on-one conversation, you're essentially saying, well, George said this. So you're saying it, but it's someone else's words. So you're not supposed to make these things up. You have them. Just speak to your customers. Just speak to them and ask them, what was your concern when I sat in front of you and I sold something to you? What was your concern? And how did I get over it? What convinced you that it was fine?
Have you seen do you have any data on wrapping testimonials into landing pages versus not? Like, does it give it any lift when a buyer is on a website or I know that's your experience and your expertise. So do you see any lift when you do provide that social proof, whether it's a photo of a celebrity on the landing page or whether it's a testimonial from an existing customer? What sort of lift do you see, if at all?
Without a doubt, I always see a lift. It is amazing. It's one of the, the tools that everyone should be using, whether if it's adding a testimonial below a call to action button, or on the pricing page itself, having on the side a few testimonials, or having some trust seals, all that. It changes from industry to industry according to their traffic and according to the conversions, but there is always an uplift when you're using social proof.
Love it. Okay. So Talia, we've come to the end of the interview. Super, super insightful, and good to hear some things that I think many of our listeners are familiar with, but from a different angle, right? From more from a lead conversion specialist angle. I found a lot of common themes with things that I know, but from a different perspective. So super helpful. Before we get into the rapid fire for our exclusive YouTube listeners, we want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners how they can connect with you if they like what they're hearing, they want to hire you, or they want to just simply follow you on social. How can they connect with you?
Awesome. So you can follow our blog. The blog has weekly guides, like extensive guides about consumer psychology, conversion optimization, like growing your business. That's on getuplift.co. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @TaliaGW. I always answer questions there. And if you want to learn more, then we also have an online course teaching all this stuff, which you will also find at getuplift.co.
Love
that's
it.
how you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So exclusive YouTube content. So if you're listening to the audio podcast version of this, hop over so you can learn what makes Talia tick. So first question for you is, who has inspired you? Who's the first person that comes to mind, Talia, and you think this person has been an inspiration for where I'm at today?
Oh, wow. Does it have to be a business, like someone?
Could be personal. Could be personal. Could be family.
Probably my dad.
Tell me more. Why?
My dad he's actually a salesperson through and through. So he owns his own business. He's always been kind of, had his own business, been doing it for years. He's been working since he was 14 years old. He built his own business. He built, a huge empire, all on his own. And I've always been able to speak to him. And even though he calls himself low tech, because he's he deals with glass. So that's his thing. He basically provides all the glass for all the big buildings with all the glasses there. So I'll talk to him about stuff in my business, and I'm worried about this, or how should I price this, or how should I do stuff? And he has a way of just seeing things further into the future, right? And he's always been there, just to, even though he doesn't really understand my business, he'll still, sales are sales and business is a business. And, ever since I was small, he's always been there to just direct me in the right direction.
Fantastic. I love it. I always love when people say their mother or father, their parents. I think it's always inspirational. And to me, it shows me or tells me the importance of being a great parent, which I've got 2 kids. So super encouraging. Second question for you, Talia. It's World Cup, biggest sports event, maybe outside of the Olympics, but World Cup. Your favorite football team is playing in the World Cup, and you have an opportunity to run a 15-second ad on the billboard in the stadium. What do you say if you had 15 seconds?
Oh my God. Wow. That's brilliant. That's such a hard question. Well, for my specific business, I guess, it'd probably be something like find out what the connection is between green ketchup and growing your conversion, growing your business.
Gosh. Wow. I want to know, could you answer that?
I can.
Tell
do
me.
You want?
Yes.
Heinz ketchup. They basically changed their bottle from red to green ketchup a few years ago, and they grew their business by $24 million in 1 year. The reason that happened is because people were saying, red is unhealthy, Heinz is unhealthy, so they just changed their color from red to green. Green, it represents health, so they grew their business into an. It was so crazy that they had to work 24 hours a day for a whole year, and have nonstop just building, pushing out this product, because it was so successful.
Wow.
So there you go.
Amazing. All right. I like that one. That was a really interesting one. You hooked me. You hooked me with it. So I think it would work. I got some good hope on that one if you ran that ad. Okay.
Awesome.
Last question, Talia.
Yes.
What book has influenced your career as a professional? What book stands out to you as the one that has given you the most inspiration, has influenced your ideology and thinking? What book comes to mind?
Predictably Irrational by Dan. So that Danny Really. That is, I think I've read it like 4 or 5 times now. Obviously, it's impacted like most of the way I do stuff online today, just understanding people better. I love everything that Dan Ariely does. So I've also taken like his online course, which he does, which is fantastic if you get a chance to do that. And the other book, by the way, which has nothing to do with business but has influenced me a ton, is the Harry Potter series. And it has influenced me a lot business-wise too. Like everything that I do in life has a lot of impact from it.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Yeah. Well, you've been fantastic. Thank you for coming on and being our guest. For our Real Sales Talk listeners, go check out her blog, go sign up for her course, and go follow her on Twitter. You've been great, and I feel like I've known you from afar, but this has given me even more insight into you. So I appreciate the time that you've given to come on the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, Real Sales Talk family, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to Real Sales Talk, and a big thank you to our sponsor, Convertist. If you enjoyed this episode, go write a review on iTunes or any other podcasting platform.